All right, Goku in DC Season 4, Episode 10. Goku looks for Raven. Let's get into it. Always, y'all know I got to go first. Shout out to the members, man. Shout out Jason57835, John Lane 2016, OD Demon Wolf 34, and Quade Moke, man. Appreciate the memberships, man. You want to be a member? Enjoy the membership on the channel. And if you don't, hey, well, hit that subscribe button. You know what I'm saying? I'm giving shout outs to the members, though. Shout out to the members, man. So, anyway, let's get into it. The sterile filtered air of the Watchtower's infirmary had been replaced by the stale coffee and desperation scent of the Daily Planet bullpen. Lois Lane sat hunched before her monitor, the blue glow etched tired lines onto her face. Clark's warning hummed in her ears. His tech was able to pierce through Goku. She chased leads all night, and the trail was colder than a metropolis winter. The rooftop where Goku fought Deadshot was a forensic black hole. The GCPD's initial report, which she'd borrowed via a friendly and deeply terrified beat cop, mentioned advanced energy signatures on radars and alloy fragments unlike any known military database. LexCorp's official statement was a masterpiece of smug deflection, painting Luthor as the resilient victim of an unprovoked metahuman attack, subtly leveraging the chaos to fuel his Man of the People campaign. And her usual network of snitches in the tech underworld had gone quiet. The word Giro was a ghost, a name that triggered hang-ups and encrypted dead ends. She'd combed through missing persons reports for scientists specializing in cybernetics or exotic energy, cross-referenced with unexplained industrial acquisitions. She found Shadows, a lab in Zurich that went dark 18 months ago after a fire, mysteriously, a robotics firm in Tokyo whose entire senior staff took simultaneous sabbaticals, connections, but there was no chain. Frustration was a familiar fuel. She pulled up the grainy zoomed-in security footage from a traffic camera 3 blocks from Lex's tower. The streak of orange intercepting the hypersonic round was just a blur. But the aftermath, she froze on a freeze frame. Amidst the glittering shower of glass from Lex's window, there was a smaller separate spray of something dark. Not glass, flecks of some type of material, probably from around. Enlarging the pixelated mess was useless, but it gave her an idea. So she grabbed her jacket. If the weapon left a trace at the impact site in Lex's office, LexCorp would have sanitized it. But the shooter's position, the rooftop, the police would have swept it. But they were looking for a sniper, not a sci-fi armory. They might have missed the subtleties. So an hour later, Lois was inspecting a plumbing leak, quote-unquote, on the adjacent building's roof, bribing the superintendent with a bottle of mid-shelf scotch. From this vantage, she scanned the crime scene tape across the way, her eyes trained for the detail everyone else overlooked, and she caught it. Not on the gravel, but melted into the asphalt of a heating vent, where part of his armor had been ripped off by Goku. It had a scorch pattern, and embedded within it was the letter R. Alright, and it was frayed with high tensile copper wiring. It was like, it wasn't circuit board material. It looked somewhat organic, like some type of synthetic muscle filament. Alright, and the initials had to be the Project Red Ribbon. Lois snapped a photo with a long lens, her heart pounding. Not a weapon, but a part of some type of cyber exoskeleton. Clark was right. This wasn't an assassination attempt. It was a field test, and someone was building a new breed of hunter from the inside out. She had her physical clue. Now she needed to find the butcher, or at the very least, the supplier. The world outside the walls of their thermoscurian sanctuary whispered of hidden androids, political upheaval, planet-purging tyrants, and cosmic prophecies. Within the sun-drenched chambers gifted by Hippolyta, those whispers faded into a distant hum, overshadowed by a far more immediate, profound rhythm. Diana reclined on a low couch piled with cushions, her hands resting on the pronounced, graceful curve of her abdomen. The fear that had once shadowed her eyes, fear of the impossible, of divine wrath, of dark destinies, it had been refined through months of quiet preparation and Goku's unwavering calmness into a fierce protective warmth. She felt them move not as a medical symptom, but as a conversation. Two distinct presences, joisting for space, a gentle kick here and a slow roll there. Goku sat on the floor beside her, his back against the couch, one hand lightly covering hers on her stomach. His typical restless energy was banked into a contented simmer. His head was tilted, his eyes closed, not in meditation, but in a deep focus. The little one on the right is doing that spinny thing again, he murmured, a grin spreading across his face. Feels like they're warming up for a kickflip. Diana laughed, a rich, full sound that had become more frequent as her pregnancy progressed. And the other one, Goku said, his voice softening with awe, just really strong. Wow, like a quiet little engine. Not showing off, just being solid. He opened his eyes, looking up at her with pure, uncomplicated wonder. They're almost here, Diana. The threats hadn't vanished. Lois and Bruce were running down leads on Dr. Jiro's network. Bruce had been filled in by Goku, of course. Lois's investigation into Project Red Ribbon was a constant, worrying ticker tape in the back of their minds. The vision of the Titaness Thea hung over them with a promise of unimaginable potential and peril, possible peril. But in this moment, those shadows could not touch the simple, monumental fact that was cradled between them. They hadn't chosen names yet. They debated whose eyes they might have and whose stubbornness. Martha Kent had sent hand-knit blankets. Clark visited often, his smile growing wider and more wistful each time. Even Bruce had delivered without comment a state-of-the-art, league-funded medical suite. For logistical preparedness, of course. The imminent arrival had rewired their universe. Goku's drive to train, to face the next threat, was now inextricably linked to the crib being carved from Themyscirian oak. Diana's duty to the world now had a fiercely personal, tiny heartbeat at its core within her. The excitement was a tangible thing in the room, a shared, breathless anticipation for the first cry, the first glimpse, the terrifying, wonderful beginning of a new chapter where they would no longer be just warriors or even lovers, but a father and a mother welcoming two new, incredible lights into a world they were determined to keep safe. While joy blossomed in the sunlit chambers of Themyscira, a profound and private winter had settled within Raven. In her quiet quarters in Titan's Tower, now feeling carnivorous and empty, she sat wrapped in a blanket that did nothing to dispel the deep internal cold that had clung to her since her return from the dead zone. The nightmares were not mere dreams. They were psychic reverberations. She would jolt awake, not from images, but from sensations. The absolute swallowing nothingness of the dead zone, a void so complete it had whispered to the emptiness in her core. Then overlaying it, the two vivid memories of Robin's resting place, with the light leaving his eyes, a death she felt she could have prevented. And then she thought of Terra's sacrifice. It played on loop, both of those in her mind. A pool of blood and a final smiling look of peace that Raven felt unworthy of her displaying. The chills were worse than any earthly cold. They were the aftershocks of channeling her power in a dimension that defied reality, a place where her father's influence was weakest, but where the ambient anti-energy had seeped into her metaphysical bones. Her soul felt frostbitten. She avoided the others. She saw the League members trying to heal, to move forward, and it only widened the chasm that she felt within. Her meditation was fractured. The disciplined emotions she had spent a lifetime willing away now leaked through the cracks, not as rage, but as a desolate, exhausting grief. She was a dam straining, and the reservoir behind it was a bottomless sorrow. Across the dimensional barriers in a realm of eternal, like fire and despair, this flickering cold pain, it was like a beacon. Trigon observed. His daughter's suffering was a familiar, delicious scent. Her usual defenses, her rigid emotional control, her disciplined mantra were corroded by trauma and guilt. The cracks in her psyche were no longer faults, they were becoming doorways. Her fluctuating emotions weren't just a symptom of distress, They were a frequency that he was learning to tune into. He could feel the dead zone's residue on her spirit, like a taint, a void that opposed his own fiery essence, but in its emptiness, it had formed a vulnerability within his daughter. Her grief over the boy's death was a raw, open wound in her soul. Her isolation was a willing retreat from the light that usually fortified her. A plan, slow and inevitable as the tectonic shift coalesced within his mind. He would not need to batter down her gates. He would simply wait for her to unlock them herself. Her pain, her chilling despair, her feeling of being utterly alone in a crowded universe. These were not weaknesses to be cured, but instruments to be played. Soon, when the oscillation between her sorrow and her attempts to repress it reached its peak, that moment of maximum psychic instability would be his key. Her universe, so brightly defended by heroes, had a crack growing right at its heart, and it was his daughter, Raven. The air in the Batcave was cool and still, a stark contrast to the chaotic energy of most of Goku's training grounds. Before the central computer bank, Batman sat cross-legged on the stone floor, his cowl removed, his eyes closed. Goku knelt opposite of him, his usual boisterous energy contained into a patient, guiding focus. "Okay, so forget your eyes for a second," Goku instructed, his voice unusually soft in the cavernous space. "And your ears, too. It's not about that stuff. It's about the hum. Everything alive has it, you know? You gotta stop listening out there," he tapped his own temple, "and start feeling in here." He placed a hand over his own center. Bruce's brow was furrowed in an intense concentration. This was a new kind of detective work. He was investigating the fabric of reality itself, it seemed. He began with what he knew, his own physiology, the steady rhythm of his heart, the flow of his own breath, the subtle warmth of his own body, and the cave's chill. Goku had him focused there first, building up a baseline. "Good," Goku murmured. "Now, push that feeling outward, like a sonar pulse. I think that's what you call it. Don't look for me. Just feel for the space that I'm taking up. My hum is way different than yours. It's bigger, kind of sparklier." Minutes passed. Then Bruce's head tilted a fraction. "A fluctuation in the air density," he stated, his voice analytical. "A localized temperature gradient of approximately 0.5 degrees Celsius difference, and a resonant frequency of sub-audible vibration." Goku blinked. Yeah? That's the stuff. You just wrapped it up in fancy words, I think." He was genuinely impressed. Batman had bypassed the mystical framing entirely, processing the sensation through the lens of empirical physics and sensory extrapolation. He wasn't just feeling ki, he was forensically analyzing it like a detective. "Now," Goku said, a challenge in his tone. He rose silently and moved, not with super speed, but with the absolute stealth of a League of Assassins trained warrior, to a shadowy perch atop a gargoyle. "Find me now. Don't think. Just feel for the sparkly hum, remember." Bruce's lips pressed into a thin line. He discarded the temperature data, the air currents. He sought the unique, energetic signature. And about a minute later, his hand rose, and a single finger pointed unerringly to the dark spot where Goku crouched, a grin spreading on the Saiyan's face. Batman wasn't just learning. He was weaponizing a new sense, and his progress was terrifyingly efficient. The focused silence of the Batcave shattered in a shared, visceral flinch. Both men's eyes snapped open simultaneously. For Goku, it was a deafening crash on the periphery of his own senses, like a tidal wave of ancient malice and soul-chilling cold that stained the psychic atmosphere. For Batman, it was far more jarring. The nascent, delicate hum he'd been learning to trace was violently eclipsed by a crushing, staticky dissonance. It wasn't an energy signature. It was like an anti-signature, a screaming void that consumed the very concept of life itself, that he'd just begun to perceive. The fact he could sense it at all from Gotham meant it wasn't just powerful, it was probably apocalyptic in scale, broadcasting on a frequency designed to corrupt reality itself. Above, through the cave's entrance, the sky did not merely darken with clouds, the daylight seemed to bleed away, consumed by a deepening, bruise-like purple that swirled into an oppressive black, streaked with veins of ominous bloody red. The light that remained felt sickly and stolen. Huh, you feel that? Goku asked, already on his feet, his playful demeanor completely vaporized. A negative energy waveform, Batman stated, his voice tight as he rose, data already streaming across the nearby monitor. Its origin is triangulating, it's localized, but its emissions appear global. It's not attacking a place, it's like poisoning a dimensional layer. Goku's gaze was locked on the corrupted sky with his jaw set. He recognized the texture of that darkness. It had hints of the Dead Zone's void, but it was filled with a conscious, hungry hatred. Whatever this was demonic. And probably very old. This is bad, Bruce. Really bad. I don't think that's a person. It's something else. He took a step toward the open air, his gi rippling as his ki began to flare. A defiant blue against the creeping red. I think I have to go now. Coordinates are being sent to your communicator, Batman said, his hand flying across the keyboard. His mind already shifting to global Justice League alerts and contingency mobilizations. Do not engage blindly. We don't know what it is. I don't need the coordinates, Bruce. I can feel where he is. And don't worry, Goku said, a spark of fierce determination in his eyes. I'll find out. With concussive thumb that shook the stalactites, he was gone, a blazing meteor tearing through the stained sky toward the epicenter of the growing darkness, leaving Batman alone in the cave, the monitor's cold light reflecting in his eyes. His first lesson in key sensing had ended with a final exam from hell, it seemed. In the arid stillness of a Kahndaq afternoon, Piccolo stood atop a windswept plateau, the ancient sands whispering below. His meditation was shattered not by a sound, but by a profound wrongness that scraped against his own senses. His head jerked upward. His antennae were twitching. The sky over the desert was not his own. The familiar blistering blue was being smothered by a creeping stain, a vortex of bruise-like purple and deep arterial red that seemed to pulse with a sickening life of its own. This was no sandstorm, no natural phenomenon. A grimace pulled at his lips. He felt it deeper than Superman or even Goku ever could. This energy was demonic. It resonated with the darkest echoes of his own original being, the heritage of the Demon King who had once been. But where his father's power was one of conquest and rage, this one was pure, unadulterated evil. Ancient, cosmic, and very hungry. It wasn't just a threat. It was like an anti-creation, a force that sought to unmake. His first instinct, born of a lifetime of solitary warfare, was to fly toward it, to meet the threat head-on, but his feet remained planted on Kahndaq stone. A new instinct, heavier and more compelling, held him fast. This was his territory now. The people in the city below, going about their lives, they were under his protection. Black Adam had not just given him a portion of his own power, he had given him a purpose and a debt. The divine lightning of the wizard now intertwined with his own emerald being, a constant humming reminder of his vow. As the dark energy washed over the land, a faint golden crackle of energy traced the lightning bolt symbol on his chest. The bestowed power of Shazam reacted to the encroaching darkness, a low thrum of defiance in his own veins. His crimson eyes narrowed, fixed on the epicenter of the distant storm. Whatever you are, he growled, the words carried away by a suddenly hot, foul wind. You will not claim this land. He crouched, not in flight, but in a guardian stance, ready to defend his post. The champion of Kahndaq would not seek the battle this time, yet. He would ensure the battle did not come here, but if it did, it would break upon him first. In the silent, crushing depths of the Atlantic Trench, Arthur Curry's eyes snapped open. The water around him, usually a constant comforting pressure, had changed. It wasn't a shift in current or a tremor in the tectonic plates. This was something fundamental. A deep, pervasive chill was leaching into the world's oceans. A cold that had nothing to do with temperature gradients. It was metaphysical frost, an energy that made the very life in the sea thrash in subconscious terror. He felt it through the crown's connection. The frantic skittering of crustaceans, burrowing deeper into silt. The panic disoriented migrations of great whales. The sudden silence of coral polyps. The ocean itself was recoiling. This was not a threat from within. Not some rogue leviathan or sorceress incursion from a hidden sea. No attack from the trench. This poison was dripping down from the surface and seeping into his kingdom from a world he'd fought so hard to protect. A low growl rumbled in his chest, vibrating through the water. He had made a promise to his people, to protect them from threats that could be realm-ending. This chilling wrongness was such a threat. So with a powerful kick, he ascended, not in a leisurely pace, but with the urgent speed of a monarch answering an alarm. The water parted for him as he shot upward. His mind was already working, communicating a silent, calming command through the psychic link of the sea life. Steady. Your king investigates, even as his own concern, solidifying into grim resolve. He broke the surface, not into sunlight, but into the eerie, blood-tinged twilight that had fallen over the entire planet. The unnatural sky reflected on the choppy, anxious waves. Arthur tread water, his gaze sweeping the horizon before locking onto the distant, swirling epicenter of the darkness. His trident hand tightened. First, the sky turns against the sea, he muttered. His voice a gravelly contrast to the ocean's roar. Now this. The surface world's troubles have a way of sinking beneath. He would find the source, and if it threatened the tides, it would answer to the king of the seven seas. Goku touched down on the scorched earth of a desolate plateau, the epicenter of the psychic hurricane. The air crackled with a static that tasted of ozone and despair. Before him stood Raven, or a grotesque effigy of her. She was suspended a few feet above the ground, engulfed in a corona of energy that was no longer her signature violet, churning amalgam of black and bloody red. Her eyes were glowing with the same sickly crimson as the sky. They were wide with a pain that was not entirely of her own. Behind her, reality itself seemed to be tearing. A massive, jagged portal was slowly wrenching itself open. Not a clean circle of magic, but a bleeding wound in the fabric of the world. From it poured the palpable, soul-numbing darkness that was poisoning the planet. Within its depths, colossal shapes of flame and shadow stirred. Raven, Goku called out, his voice cutting through the howling psychic wind. He took a step forward, his guard up, but his stance more concerned than combative. What's going on? What is this? Raven's head turned slowly toward him. The movement was strained, as if she were fighting a current. When she spoke, her voice was a layered dissonance, her own soft tone fractured by a deeper resonant echo that was utterly alien. Goku, you shouldn't be here. Her own words fought their way out, laced with anguish. I can't hold it back anymore. The door is opening. He's coming. Pause. She shuddered violently, the dark energy flaring. The cold, the grief. He's using it. I'm the lock. And it's breaking. Her glowing eyes met his, and for a flicker he saw the friend that he knew, and she was terrified and drowning. Please, get out of here. Get everyone away before it's too late. Before I can't stop myself from helping him. The plea was a knife to Goku's instincts. He saw not a villain, but a teammate that was in torture, used as some type of conduit for a seeming invasion. The portal groaned, widening another foot. The answer was clear. This wasn't Raven's doing. It was something using her and breaking her from the inside out. And Goku was never going to leave a friend behind. Goku's brow furrowed deeper. Help? Who? Talk to me. What can't you hold back? Before she could muster another warning, the very air coagulated. The howling wind died, replaced by a silence so profound it felt like pressure on the eardrums. Then a voice emerged. It was not heard, though, through sound, but felt as a direct vibration in the marrow, in the soul. A basso profundo of pure distilled malice that seemed to speak from the collapsing sky and the trembling earth simultaneously. She speaks of me. The words rolled over Goku like a physical wave, carrying them with a physical payload of despair and infinite, arrogant hunger. He turned his head, following the source of the voice to the heart of the bleeding portal. The mass of shadowy forms within were coalescing, drawing together into a single terrible silhouette of red. A figure began to manifest, pulling itself into their dimension, and two horns with crimson energy, and then he had eyes that shone with the cold light of dead stars. Then a torso of molten rock and sculpted shadow, vast enough to dwarf buildings. The temperature on the plateau skyrocketed, not with natural heat, but with a blistering infernal energy that warped the light around them. This was no mere monster. This was an event, some type of demonic titan, fully manifesting in a reality not meant to contain him. One set of those star-bright eyes shifted from Raven's straining form to lock onto Goku. The gaze was a physical weight, an assessment that felt less like being seen and more like being cataloged for consumption. I am Trigon. The entity boomed, the name cracking the stone at Goku's feet. Your world ender, the devourer of hope and the father of the conduit you mistake for your friend. The revelation landed with the force of a meteor strike. Goku's eyes darted from the colossal emerging horror to Raven's small agonizing form suspended before it. Father, the math of it was monstrous. This all-consuming evil was the source of the kind, reserved teammate he'd fought alongside. He saw it now. The same crimson energy, the same cosmic scale like of power. But where Raven's was controlled and disciplined, this was raw, and it felt like an annihilating chaos. Trigon's manifestation neared completion. His power was saturating the atmosphere itself. She has fulfilled her purpose. Her pain was the key, and her blood, of course, the seal. Now, this reality will be my newest feast for Conquer. Every instinct, every battle-hardened sense in Goku's body screamed a single deafening alarm. This wasn't like King Piccolo's tyranny or Vegeta's ruthless pride or even the cold cunning of the androids. This entity, Trigon, exuded a presence that was fundamentally anti-everything, completely negative. It wasn't just powerful, its very existence seemed to corrode reality itself, to drain light and hope from the air itself. The sheer gravitational pull of its malice was unlike any energy that Goku had ever felt. There was no time for analysis and no moment for a cautious probe. In the face of a threat this absolute, Goku's Saiyan biology and warrior spirit mandated one response: overwhelming, immediate force. His body reacted before his mind finished the thought. With a guttural roar that tore from his very core, Goku's aura exploded around him. But this was no ordinary power-up. It was a detonation. Bluish light, searing and defiant, erupted in a blazing column that, for a moment, pushed back the hellish crimson gloom. The ground beneath him didn't just crack, it vaporized in a circular crater, molten rock bubbling at the edges. Energy crackled around him like a violet lightning, his hair lifting as the blue glow intensified. He didn't assume a stance. He became a conduit, drawing in every ounce of power he could muster. His hands flew to his side. His fists cupped blue energy between it didn't just gather, it screamed into existence. A sphere of white light formed, so dense and curious it warped the light that was around it, sucking in the demonic miasma and incinerating it, apparently. This wasn't a test, this was his answer. Booyah blast! He bellowed, the name a promise of annihilation. With the final seismic surge, he thrust his fist forward. The colossal beam of pure, focused ki tore through the corrupted atmosphere. A blazing sphere of defiance aimed not just at the towering form of Trigon, but at the hellish portal itself. A declaration that this world already had its defender. The searing column of the Booyah Blast, a technique that at full power could destroy a planet, crossed a short distance in a flash of incinerating light. It struck the center of Trigon's vast, shadow-forged torso with the sound that tore the sky. Boom! Of pure energy released that would have vaporized a fleet of warships. And then, nothing. No explosive impact. No searing burn, no stagger of the colossal form. The brilliant white light energy didn't explode against Trigon. It seemingly dissipated against him, like a wave of luminescent water breaking harmlessly against a cliff of black obsidian. The terrifying power was absorbed and silenced, and utterly negated, without the slightest visible effort from the demonic lord. The silence that followed was more deafening than the blast itself. Then the laughter began. It started as low seismic rumble deep within Trigon's form, a vibration that shook the continent's plates, it seemed. It built layer upon layer into a roaring multidimensional cacophony that wasn't just heard, it was felt as a physical nausea, a psychic scourge. The 6 burning eyes blazed with amusement. A spark. Trigon's voice boomed, the words laced with infinite contempt. A brief, pretty spark against the eternal night that is to come. You struggle so loudly with the power of flesh and spirit, little mortal. Admirable, but utterly meaningless. Goku stared, his arms still outstretched, the last sputtering tendrils of his ki fading from his fingertips. His senses still ringing from his own output, reported back a terrifying truth. His full power attack hadn't just been blocked, it had been consumed without a ripple, as if he'd thrown a pebble into a black hole. A cold, unfamiliar knot of primal understanding tightened within his gut. This wasn't an enemy that he could overpower. He was facing a force of nature. This was an extinction event with a voice and a will. For the first time, his strength felt not just matched, but completely irrelevant. The searing afterimage of his Booyah Blast still danced on his retinas, a futile firework against an infinite dark. Goku's arms fell to his side, not in defeat, but with the cold, sharp clarity of a warrior who had just taken the measure of a mountain and found it to be a world, his own power, the power that had matched his most powerful opponents. Foes had been swallowed without a whisper. The psychic roar of Trigon's laughter wasn't just sound, it was like an erosion, scraping at his very will. His eyes snapped from the towering, contemptuous demon to the small, agonizing figure suspended before it. Raven, her form a nexus of cracking violet light under the assault of the crimson corona. He saw it now, the terrible symbiosis. Her pain was the lens, her power was the doorway. Trigon wasn't just using her, he was feeding on her. And as long as that connection held, this invasion would continue. Damn it. A grimace of pure frustration twisted his face. Every instinct screamed to charge, to keep fighting, to do something. But the smaller instinct, the one forged in battles against Piccolo and Vegeta, the one that knew when to train and when to seek help, roared even louder. He couldn't blast Raven free. He couldn't punch a concept like a dimensional possession. Clenching his fist so hard the air crackled around them, Goku locked eyes with Raven. He didn't shout over Trigon's cacophony. He spoke with a focused intensity, aiming his words like a dart at the flicker of her true self behind the glowing red eyes that were overtaking her purple pupils. Don't worry, Rachel, he said, using the name few ever did, a touchstone to her own humanity. This isn't you. Just hold on. I'm getting help. I will be back for you. I promise. It was a vow, not a farewell. In a single fluid motion, he crouched and launched himself skyward. But this was no desperate panic flight. It was a controlled, violent eruption. A sonic boom that carved a temporary tunnel of clean air through the miasma. A brilliant blue streak tearing a defiant line across the blood-red sky. He was a living signal flare, shooting not away from the flight, but toward the only chance that they had. Trigon's booming laughter followed him, not in pursuit but in a dismissive amusement. One set of his star-bright eyes watched the tiny brilliant spark recede. Fly, little spark. Gather your flickering candles, and let them witness the dawn of their final night. Your hope is merely the seasoning for my feast. To a being who consumed galaxies, the frantic rallying of mortals was not a threat. It was part of the spectacle, a confirmation of his absolute, inevitable victory that was to come. Let the insect summon its hive. It would only make the crushing more complete. His focus returned to the widening portal and to the breaking child who was his key. The corruption of this world would be a leisurely, delicious affair. As Trigon's laughter faded into the vibrating atmosphere, his 4 burning eyes swept across the bleeding vista on the earth. The portal behind him throbbed like an infected heart, but the direct invasion was merely the first course. He still needed to regain his full power in this realm, so his true dominion required servants, enforcers to scour the flesh. And what better enforcers than those this world's heroes, quote unquote, had already spent their spirit to defeat? Why create new terrors when old familiar ones could be reforged with fresh torment and infernal power amps? This reality clings to its ghosts, Trigon's voice intoned, not to anyone present but to the planet itself. Let them rise again. Let them remember their pain and know I am their master. Let them be my hand that forms the fist. He raised 2 of his hands, not in a spell, but as if in a command. A gesture of absolute cosmic will. The effect was not localized to the plateau. It rippled across the world's key lines through the streams of negative energy that was now polluting the biosphere. The ground did not simply crack. It convulsed. Trigon's command was not a spell, but a cosmic edict. It resonated through the corrupted ley lines of Earth. A frequency of pure resurrection that sought not to heal, but to exhume and enslave. The ground of the desolate plateau convulsed in response, but it was in scorched, forgotten impact crater, half a world away. The very site where Goku and his friends had defeated them, that the command found its most vengeful and willing vessel. The earth did not simply crack, it screamed. A geyser of blackened soil and molten rock erupted hundreds of feet into the blood-red sky. From the heart of this infernal fountain, a figure was vomited forth, landing with a cataclysmic boom that reshaped the crater anew. It was Nappa, but not the Nappa who had fallen. His massive form was intact and reconstructed by hellish power. His battle armor, once cracked and scorched, was now fused to his flesh, the plates edged with glowing crimson lines like cooled lava. His skin was a pallid, deathly gray, and his eyes, once burning with Saiyan rage, now smoldered with the same bloody fire as Trigon's own. The symbol of the Saiyan race on his chest flickered with an unholy light. He was not merely alive, he was reforged, a Saiyan brute that was amplified by demonic energy, his very cells vibrating with a hatred that had festered in the void of death. He uncurled from his landing crouch, his knuckles pressing into the earth. The ground for 50 yards around him crystallized and blackened from his touch. He took a single shuddering breath, the first taste of the air since his humiliation, and it was thick with the scent of despair and dimensional decay. A grin split his face, a horrific rictus that showed too many teeth. Namekian. His voice was a granting avalanche, deeper and layered with a hellish echo. He remembered it all. The feel of Piccolo's hand plunging in his chest and taking out of his heart. The humiliation had been the last fuel for his consciousness before it all went black. Now was the first fuel for his resurrection. He flexed his arms, and the air detonated around him in a sphere of crimson and gold energy. A sick perversion of his Saiyan aura. The power was familiar, yet profoundly wrong. It felt hungry and consuming the light around it, rather than emitting it. If Nappa's resurrection was a volcanic eruption of rage, the next emergence was a study in silent, chilling reassembly. The site was not a natural landmark, but a place of profound personal defeat. The scattered fused remnants of the underground lab where Goku, in a moment of shattered grief, had vaporized him with a cobalt blue blast of pure energy. Here, the air still tasted of old ozone and ionized regret. The command of Trigon did not disturb rubble, it gathered it. Shards of carbonized alloy and flecks of molecularized body armor, and the lingering psychic echo of a supreme tactician's final, furious thought. All were drawn from the earth in the memory of the place itself. From a pool of shadow that wept upward, a form condensed first. The gleaming blackened alloy of the new cybernetic frame, more seamless and organic than anything Dr. Gero had ever crafted, etched with faint pulsating lines of hell-forged-like energy. Then muscle and sinew wove itself around it, not with the vitality of life, but with the grim, unyielding performance of a thing that had rejected the very concept of its own end. Finally, the mask formed, the familiar black and orange, but now the single eye lens glowed with the steady, baleful crimson, a smaller cousin to the stars burning in Trigon's own gaze. Slade Wilson stood complete. He did not roar, he did not test his new limbs with dramatic force. He simply was. He looked down at his hands, flexing the fingers and observing the way the infernal energy traced the pathways of his upgraded systems. A low, thoughtful hum emanated from his chest plate. I calculated a 0.03 chance of repair because I suffered a total atomic dispersal, preventing any form of recovery, he stated. His voice was the same gravelly monotone, now underscored by a faint dimensional echo. He touched the center of his chest where Terra's final act and Goku's vengeance had met. It seems I was incorrect. It appears some equations refuse to be solved. He lifted his head, that single red lens scanning the blighted sky, processing the data of a world under new management. There was no anger, no manic thirst for revenge. There was only cold, analytical certainty. Death had not been a defeat. It had been an unscheduled upgrade, a transfer of ownership from a mortal's ambition to a cosmic power's utility. Hell, Slade mused, the word devoid of fear or wonder, lacks adequate containment protocols for a will that refuses to terminate. An oversight, now. His lens focused, as if targeting solutions were already painting themselves across his vision. The variables have changed. The boy is no doubt stronger. The battlefield is eternal, and the employer is exponentially more demanding. The mission, however, remains clear. He was Deathstroke, reborn, no longer a mercenary but an internal enforcer. Hell hadn't held him. It had simply hardened him, a better toolkit, and a target list that now included the very universe itself, it seemed. The final resurrection was not an emergence, but a conjuration. It did not occur on a battlefield of physical defeat, but at the site of a sacred violation, the forgotten scourge path of Earth in Central City, where Aquaman's trident had pierced his very own heart, and where his last act had been spit his essence into the future. Here, Trigon's will did not reassemble matter, it performed a dark sacrament. The air itself curdled, condensing into a swirling vortex of emerald and crimson mist. The lingering echo of Piccolo's malignant life force now pulled from the ether and fused with the fresh seeping power of the hell dimension. The ground burned with necrotic symbols that hadn't existed moments before. From the vortex he coalesced, but in a form that harkened back to his primal, most infamous self. Demon King Piccolo stood tall, his familiar green skin now dark and lustrous like poison jade, etched with pulsating scarlet veins that mirrored the cracks in the sky. His antenna twitched with predatory awareness. His old outfit was gone and replaced by an aura of tangible shadow that clung to him like a royal mantle. The hole that was in his chest was sealed by a knot of solidified dark energy. He opened his eyes, and they glowed with the furnace light of intelligent cosmic malice. He stretched his fingers, and the space around them warped as if reality itself was but a soft play to his renewed will. Ah, he breathed, the sound of dry rasp with landslide and shifting tectonic plates. A terrible serene smile spread across his face. This clarity. He examined his own hand, watching the red energy dance between his claws. I spent centuries calling myself a demon, nurturing hatred, wielding power I thought was absolute. I was a child playing with mere cinders. He looked toward the distant towering silhouette of Trigon, and for a moment his expression held something like reverence. Now I feel the true depth of the abyss. I feel its cold fire in my very veins. This is my birthright, amplified. He clenched his fists, and a sphere of energy formed, not the brilliant green of his past, but a swirling, unstable orb of emerald core, sheathed in a crackling red lightning. It hummed with frequency that promised not just destruction, but complete unraveling. I am no longer just a king, Piccolo declared, his voice resonating with a newfound dreadful authority. I am a vessel of the eternal night. And the Saiyan, the world that cast me out, will learn the difference between a demon who ruled a planet and a demon who has tasted the power that will devour all planets. He was the final piece, the sorceress lieutenant. Where Nappa brought brute force and Slade brought ruthless tactics, Piccolo brought an ancient, intelligent evil now plugged directly into the source. He was no longer just a foe to be defeated. He was a symptom of the world's terminal disease that was to come and growing. All right, so that was a long one. I hope you guys liked it. I decided to throw Trigon in here, man. Hopefully you guys like it. Let me know what you guys think of the design of Trigon, by the way. Sometimes he's depicted with 6 sides. Sometimes he's depicted with 4. I decided to go for 4. Anyways, man, if you did like it, you know what to do. Hype up the video, like the video, comment your thoughts down below, subscribe, become a member, all of that. I will catch y'all on the next one. Peace.